Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rebecca, and on this channel, as you know, I go through all things accounting, finance, Excel and investment related. Now today I'm going to talk about something that's really important, and it's something that you'll see in your AAT studies, ICB studies, ATT, whatever professional body you are with, this is covered. And I had a very real world experience of this because this week I had my AML inspection, and my aim of this video is to share with you, how that went. I'm not going to go into massive amount of detail because I'm not sure that I can go through everything, that was asked in that inspection, but I can definitely point you in the right direction on guidance, tools, tips, and the documents that I keep here, which enabled me to pass that inspection. So, if I look tired, there's a reason for that. And I've got my coffee here to try and get me through, because the night before the inspection I did not sleep. I didn't sleep a wink really, not well enough, and I'm still catching up. So I'm going to do my best to try and stay awake and get through this. So this is going to be a very long video. I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's going to be as far as it needs to be. So first of all, I'm just going to log on to my ICB. So at the top up here, if you go across where you've got About Us, Membership, Study, Forum, Resources, Find a Bookkeeper, and you hover over them, there's certain information on here. So if you go to Resources at the top here, you can go down to MLR, which is Money Laundering Regulations. So down here there's a lot of blurb for you to read through, and I recommend that you read through it. It is very important that you understand AML, whether you're with the ICB or another qualification. Now, in terms of navigating all of this, because there is a lot of information there, what I would recommend you do firstly is read this section here about the anti-money laundering supervision. Here it states that members with an ICB practice license are automatically supervised by ICB under the MLRS. As an ICB practice licence holder, compliance with the MRL is dependent on you satisfying the requirements of the MLRs, as well as ICB requirements as your supervisor. Please refer to Printable AML To Do List download for more information. So we'll look at that in a second. Now, the main thing to note off this page are three things. Firstly, if you click on the AML To Do List, it's going to give you a list of templates that you can use in your practice, and I highly recommend you use these, and I'm going to go through each one of these in turn to help you to complete that as well as I possibly can. And if you're unsure or stuck, go and ring the ICB, and that again is one of my highest recommended tips. If you are unsure, do not be afraid to ring the ICB, and it's best that you ring the ICB to make sure that you're doing what you should be doing correctly. So yes, it's all here, but ring them and even talk through your current documentation process. Explain to them that you just want to make sure you're doing things right, and they will talk you through what you need to do. So if I go to the AML To Do List here, this here is a list of all of the templates that you can use in your practice, and I had downloaded every single one of these into a file and I edited every one of them, so as in I answered every single question that was on there, and I kept a note of that. So I had these as an ICB template, and then I had the completed version as a saved version in PDF, and keep it in PDF because on there you can write the date that you completed it, the signature, etc. Even if it's a typed signature with the date, and just make sure you keep a copy of that. Then it shows that you are looking at the compliance that you need to follow. Now, if I click on this AML To Do List download, this here gives you a list of instructions to follow. Now, I wanted to make sure that I said yes or no to each one of these, so I actually created a Word document off the back of this and then answered those questions and put a date stamp on there. So I had a column to say, this is the task, has it been completed, yes or no, date of completion, and then notes if I had any notes at all. So I'm going to run through these because they are really important. So, have you appointed a person responsible for you complying with MLRO? Yes, so if you're a sole trader, it's you. If you're a limited company, you need to appoint somebody. And no, I don't know if it states on this, I'm going to read through in a second, but if you have a change in the MLRO, which is your Money Laundering Reporting Officer, you need to tell the ICB, and there is a date that you need to do that by. So you need to have appointed a Money Laundering Reporting Officer, provide DBS certificates for all beneficial owners, officers, managers, and yourself as a sole practitioner for ICB approval. So when you first join the ICB, they ask you for a DBS certificate, and you can get that online, and it takes a little bit of time for it to come, but that has to be valid and in date. So they only last 3 months, these DBS certificates. So it's worth making sure that you've provided the ICB with a DBS certificate for all beneficial owners. And if there is a change in ownership, then I would recommend having a new copy of each DBS certificate for the new beneficial owner to be provided to the ICB. So next, carry out a risk assessment on all clients on an ongoing basis. So if you receive a new client, if a client accepts your proposal, you need to be adding them onto the ICB AML online. And the reason for that is because it gives you a risk assessment. So that risk assessment says this client is low, medium, high. And one of the things that I've discussed with the ICB before today is that in the past, if I believed that somebody was a different risk factor to what had been shown, so what had been calculated, in the past I have amended the risk rating and put a note to say why I think that, with reasonable explanations as to why. However, upon having further conversations, I do not recommend you do that. So I recommend that you keep the risk factor that the ICB have given you, because sometimes they might have given you a risk factor of, say, medium, even though you've known the client for years and years, because they're a new client to you. So there's other factors that are going on when they're providing this risk assessment. So I don't recommend you change that. And if you have changed it, then you need to keep a note of the fact that you've changed it. So you've got to keep that documented. So moving on. Ensure the practice is trading under the name and address on the practice license. So that's an easy one to fix, and definitely worth checking if you're moving over from, say, another professional body over to the ICB. Next, ensure all relevant staff are screened on appointment and at regular intervals. So you want to make sure that even if you're a sole trader, that you have a process in place for the time when you're going to be taking on staff. I.e., if I was taking on staff tomorrow, there's a few things I would check. Firstly, I would get 2 references for that individual member of staff. I would undertake a DBS search, so I'd ask them to provide me with an up-to-date DBS certificate. I would obtain copies of the certification, such as an AAT diploma, ICB diploma, etc. All certificates that they have available, I would keep a copy on file. On top of that, I would be regularly reviewing the certificates that they have to make sure that we have the most up-to-date version of that certificate. So for instance, if they're on level 3 AAT and they've now completed level 4, I would ask them for a copy of that. And one thing we used to do in practice is we used to obtain a download of the results page from the AAT website for individuals who were with the AAT. So where they have a list of all of the exams they've undertaken, we would take a screenshot of that. So that's just a little bit of guidance and tips. Please note that some of this might seem a little bit overboard. However, when it comes to the likes of AML and other guidance, other procedures that you have to have in place, I'd rather go over the top than be the other way around. So next, let's move on to take appropriate measures to ensure that relevant employees, including yourself, are made aware of the law relating to money laundering and terrorist financing and to the requirements of data protection. So here I have a policy, a Word document, which states what would need to happen in certain circumstances, such as if a client was low, medium, high risk, what would we do in that situation? Who do they need to report that to? So it would be the MLRO in that situation, and then they can escalate it from there. What would you do if you highlighted a PEP? Do you have any guidance on the system around what a PEP is? Do you have any guidance around other areas for staff to look at? And also, do you have a training program in place? So are you enabling staff to undertake annual money laundering training, and is there documented proof of that training? And once all of that has been completed, are you keeping a record of that training that has been completed? And again, on the ICB website here, we've got a training record file just here, so you can fill that in for each individual, and that can be dated at the time that this has been completed and can be regularly completed on an annual basis for those staff or whenever there's a change that has been made. I think the next point has also been covered with that, but my main point with any of this is, and it was always the same when I worked in audit, that you want to be making sure that you document everything, as in your thought process. You're documenting that as you're going along. So as you're, for instance, undertaking client due diligence checks and you think that somebody is high risk, for example, well, what checks have you undertaken? What enhanced due diligence have you undertaken to make sure that you have met the requirements for AML when dealing with that client? If they are dealing with a lot of cash, what extra steps have you taken to make sure that you comply? And you want to make sure that you document it down within that client's file, and that's readily available also, and that it's well documented, as in, it's labelled correctly, is labelled for somebody to see upon request. Complete a whole of practice risk assessment and keep under review. So again, under the AML checklist templates that we've got here, if you go to the practice risk assessment checklist just here, this here is a whole practice risk assessment guide, and please do read through all of this. At the bottom here, there is some information that you need to complete, and you need to circle whether your practice is considered high, medium or low, and also the justification of the risk assessment and summary of actions to be taken, so don't miss that out. Make sure that you're completing this area here, and you can refer back to the clients that you've got on this AML online and the number of clients that are detailed as high, medium or low. And have you amended the system allocated AML risk rating? Please clarify. So this again needs to be completed, it needs to be signed, it needs to be saved down. So definitely worth a look. So let's go back to this AML to-do list again. Next, complete written policies, controls and procedures to manage and mitigate risks identified in practice risk assessment, and keep under review to ensure their effectiveness. So a requirement of the ICB supervision is to show at least an annual review. So here, again, when you're creating policies and procedures to be followed by staff and a practice-wide policy and procedure on AML and what needs to be done, you need to be looking at that on a regular basis. And the ICB, I believe, states that has to be annual. If you have a PDF version of that file with the date and signature on there, it's a lot better, and it cannot be amended so easily as a Word document can. So I'd make sure that, again, if you complete the annual review or 6-monthly review of that file, make sure that you have a PDF copy of the prior version and the new version. Don't save over the prior version. Definitely keep a copy of the new version to show that was last year's, this is this year's, etc. So you've got that. It's even worth, and I've seen this in practice again, where you've got a file for years under MLRO. So if you've got a file for anti-money laundering, then you've got a file for 2020, a file for 2021, a file for 2022 with staff procedures, risk assessment, practice risk assessment, all of the documentation that is required. And also, just a tip, and I'll show you my files in a second, I would keep almost 2 files within the AML file. So I'd have one for internal, which is your staff policies, procedures, etc., and external. And in the external file, I would there have documented proof of the client due diligence, client risk assessment, etc., to do with those individual clients that you have. So again, just a tip and just the way that I do things, but you might find a better way of doing it. But yeah, put those in the comment section, because it'd be very good to hear from other practices what you're doing, how you're doing things, and maybe we can create some sort of best practice in the community to make sure that we're all compliant with AML. So any tips, guidance that anybody else has, put those in the comment section, light the comment section up, because it would be good to hear from everybody.